Welcome back to the Saints Squad. I am your host, Dylan Sanders from Saints Wire. I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't wish my brother Aaron a happy birthday on this Cinco de Mayo.
I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. I think NFL teams were more afraid of Deion Sanders than they were afraid of Shedeur Sanders.
John Hendricks, New Orleans football. Happy Cinco de Mayo, and you sit on a throne of lies.
This is former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore, and it is minicamp week, so we mean to talk about it today. But first, we're going to talk about your quarterbacks.
It's the Saints Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad show, starting now.
Howdy, Houdat Nation. Welcome back to Saints Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every Monday and Thursday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today, we're going to be diving into a ton of stuff. It's a mailbag episode, so it's stuff that you wanted to hear about. We're going to be talking about, why didn't they draft a wide receiver? What's Kendre Miller's season going to look like? We're going to go through, name the 5 starters in the secondary. We're going to do a little rookie minicamp preview. But first, we're going to be starting off with justifying the selection of Tyler Shough over Shedeur Sanders. Why did they do it, Ross?
I guess I carry the weight of the question.
Ross, why'd they do
it? Why, Ross? Why would they? So here's my assumption. My assumption is that the Saints simply had Tyler Shough ranked higher on their board than they had Shedeur Sanders ranked higher on their board. Turns out that wasn't specifically unique to just the New Orleans Saints. But I'm going to give you guys the take that I thought was the best take that I've heard around this situation from my good friend Tyler Rowland, who hosts our Locked On NFL show. And he said that he believed that teams passed on Shedeur Sanders, particularly the coaches, because everything that we know about Shedeur Sanders that's positive all happened under Deion Sanders as his head coach. And Deion Sanders has already been in conversations around Dallas and all that kind of stuff to potentially be the head coach there. And so his proposal here was that NFL coaches and general managers avoided the Shedeur Sanders pick because coaches were afraid to be replaced eventually with Deion Sanders if they couldn't make things work with Shedeur Sanders. And I thought it was one of the more interesting viewpoints on here because I refuse to believe that a guy's attitude was so bad that he went from being the number 2 overall selection to the number 5 overall, or to the fifth round, when we see guys with sexual assault cases, active open sexual assault cases, go within the first 3 rounds when they were typically first round picks. So I just don't see those two things equating. So I wonder how much of the Deion Sanders angle of all of this really ended up being a part of what happened with Shedeur Sanders, or was Shedeur Sanders' personality really just that bad? And if his personality was really just that bad, then that explains why the Saints chose Tyler Shough over Shedeur Sanders.
Lance, what do you think?
Well, since Ross brought up draft boards, I guess I'll go into the way I guess that I understand teams not just build their draft board, but how the draft really works for teams. Each team is unique. There is no standard set rules or plan for how and why they draft, and for how and why they grade guys. Some teams will grade players in a numbered ranking system. Other teams will give players a draft round grade. And generally that number varies from team to team. Like I think we talked a couple weeks ago, we said the Saints draft board is 125 players. I know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers draft board is 135 players total, right? And generally those teams will still have players left on their draft board by the end of the draft. So we're talking about over 250 players selected. And if a team only has half of that number on their draft board and not even all the guys get drafted, then that shows you the variance in how teams have players graded. Now, specific to Shedeur, I think it's interesting when, the most interesting part to me, obviously, was that everybody from to a man outside of those buildings had Shedeur as at least a first round pick, maybe not a top 2 or 3 pick, maybe not even a top 10 pick, but definitely a first round talent. Now, everybody else outside of those buildings' opinion is nothing but an opinion, right? It doesn't matter what Mel Kiper thinks, what Todd McShay thinks, what all these draft experts thinks, what we think even, right? Like it doesn't matter. The only voice or choice that matters in these situations are the 32 general managers and or head coaches and or owners of teams, right? So if none of them had Shedeur as a first round guy, it makes sense that he didn't go in the first round. And to me, honestly, when you evaluate a player, there's so much more that goes on besides the X's and O's, the stats, what he did in his collegiate career, and especially when you're talking about a quarterback that you're wanting to bring in to lead your organization and eventually give probably $200 million. There is a huge test for that player that is more so of the character, the personality, the off the field. How does he work? Is he prepared? How does he do in meetings? What is his communication style? I mean, there's a million different things that they go through, and we probably won't ever know the truth about what went on in some of those interviews that he had. But we do know that the tape showed that he was probably a first round talent, and if not, maybe a second or third, and no later than that round talent. But something turned that into a later round guy. There's another layer to that, though. So if I'm a team and I've got 15 guys with first round grades and I've got 10 guys with second round grades, and let's say I've got 15 or 20 guys with third round grades, and we get to the third round and I've still got guys with first round grades on my board. Now, that doesn't mean Mel Kiper's big board here, right?
Right.
And then I've still got 7 guys in my second round, and then there's still 12 guys in my third round. If Shedeur is one of those guys that's in the third round, well, there's still 12 or 19 guys ahead of him in the pecking order. And that's kind of how a guy, in essence, moves down a draft board, because there's guys that are higher graded ahead of him. Now, there's also the drafting for need versus best available argument, right? When you're talking about quarterbacks, generally, if it's a need, they're drafting quarterbacks early. Like if you have a dire need for a quarterback, you're drafting them in the first or second round. Generally, that's not always, but I just think that a lot of times teams are going to err on the side of drafting best available if they don't love a quarterback in the first or second round. And I think that's kind of the scenario that happened here. I think that teams were intrigued by Shedeur, and maybe they learned a little bit more about him and didn't quite love him as much after that. And so that's to me why it wasn't quite as surprising that he dropped the way that he did. And honestly, I think this could potentially be the best thing for him, right? To not have to go in and be a day one starter and deal with that level of pressure. He's definitely going to still be highly scrutinized and highly covered because he is Shedeur Sanders. He's very boisterous. He is Deion Sanders' son. And maybe there is some legs to your theory, Ross, or your buddy's theory that coaches and or organizations that overall could be a little bit intimidated by the personality, and potentially have to worry about their fan base being in a situation where they're calling for Deion Sanders. I mean, I'm not going to say I know that's what happened for sure, but it doesn't seem too far-fetched to me. So, I guess that's a long way for me to explain it, but it's not, I don't think it's as crazy as a drop as it's made to be from the prognosticators around talking when they talk about the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
John?
the thing that I said that was unfair, but that is cleared up by Lance, is I've said, I don't understand how a guy goes from being a top 2 selection to, a 5th round selection, a top 2 selection from whom, right? That was a top 10. That was a top 2 selection. We don't know that NFL teams ever looked at him as going that high. We know that media boards did, to your point, Lance, but we don't know that the NFL teams actually looked at him that way.
Correct. And here's another thing. All these guys want to talk about their sources and their sources and their sources and their sources. Cool, right? Everybody can find a source somewhere, but generally those sources are not the decision makers.
Correct. Right.
General managers are not spilling the beans. I'm sorry. They just don't
it's not
do
happening.
It. And the reason why they don't do it, because they don't want anybody else to know what their plans are. So they're not out here in these streets talking to Mel Kiper about how much they love Shedeur and how great he fits in this offense. Like that's just not a thing. So, and I'm not saying that people are lying about having sources. I'm sure they do have sources. Somebody in the building is going to give some information from time to time, but it's not the guys that are at the end of the day the ones making those phone calls to these players, letting them know that they're drafting them.
Yeah, good point.
John, what do you think?
Well, a little bit of both from what Ross and Lance have said. I mean, and the thing is, so the Saints had 125 names on their board. Let's just say that first and foremost. In the process, I heard very reliable. Everybody's got sources, right? But I mean, on this show, I told you guys and told everybody that there was quarterbacks that were on their board. The top 3 names that I kept hearing, Cam Ward is obviously number 1. Nobody's going to deny that, right? But then I heard Tyler Shough, and then I heard Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart was a Jeff Ireland guy. Tyler Shough was a Kellen Moore guy, right? And so, again, that's kind of where it is. And now with Shedeur Sanders, I heard he was more like 5th on their board, right? And so, again, you draft a quarterback, unless you're the Browns, you draft 2, but, you're going to just take the 1, right? And so for New Orleans, I mean, it makes sense. Now, for Shedeur, he's not his dad. When Deion came out, I know it's been a long time, 89. Some of y'all probably weren't born. I was 5. Everybody knows what kind of player and person Deion was. I mean, he was a 2-way player. He played baseball in addition to football. Like, he was a one-on-one type player, right? And so Deion had a little bit of, sugar to him, if you will. You know what I'm saying? He has like that spice and that sugar, you know what I'm saying? But again, for Shedeur, I think when you look at it, it is a humbling process for him. I hope that he comes down to earth a little bit. I hope that this gives him a little bit more chip on his shoulder. And of course, we're not going to know in the next couple of years. But I tell you what, if the Browns get a few more extra primetime games, or if the NFL flexes, or he does become a starter, whatever the quote may or the thing may be, it's going to be interesting how quickly things are going to flock. Because you're right. I mean, people were covering the draft here in New Orleans. National people were sitting here in the chance that that Shedeur got drafted in New Orleans. Like, that's how crazy it was, is that the national media was sent here to New Orleans to cover a draft, which they never cover the draft, right? They just come here in the chance that Shedeur might have been taken. And so, look, I hope he does well. I hope he has a good support system around him. Again, when I have talked to people in the process, and most of the times where insiders get their information, a lot of times, sometimes it's team, a lot of times it's agents, all that other good stuff. But one of the people that I was told is they literally rank their boards. So you have a player who might be blank, like no concerns or anything, but one might have injury concerns. They get a color grade on the particular board. Then they might have a character concern. That's a different color. Now, if they have both, they get a different color, right? Like, I heard different colors for that. But if they have an injury concern and a character concern, they get put in a bucket. And I'm not saying the Saints or any other teams have done it that way. I'm just saying from an agent perspective, what I've heard. But look, again, I don't think there's any injury concern. You see the talent. I've seen worse quarterbacks taken in the first round. I've seen better quarterbacks taken in the first round, all that other good stuff. You can sit there and debate that. Only time's going to tell when we talk about this next year or 2 years down the road. Can he beat out Joe Flacco? Is he going to beat out Dylan Gabriel? I'm not saying he can't, or anything, but that's going to be the emphasis. And Joe Flacco has been around. He's helped teams in the past. Cleveland probably needs somebody, a leader like him. Shedeur's got to do a lot of growing up here very quickly if he wants to get somewhere faster than what Dion or him want to do.
It does feel like Tyler Shough is on a faster track than Shedeur. Like Tyler Shough is on a faster track in New Orleans than Shedeur Sanders is in Cleveland. I think I would.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel pretty confident about that.
Well, whether you like the pick or not, it was the pick. So we're going to tell you coming up next why Tyler Shough has an important week ahead of him. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Use Upwork. You don't want your bosses to be comparing you to Mickey Loomis with your decision making. So find the right choices, find the right talent at the right time. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Use Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect you with the top talent and grow your business today. Hey, Ross.
That's the bottom line because Dylan Sanders said so. All right, cool. Got that out of the way.
Dylan the Thump Sanders out here.
We're gonna have to get shirts that may say "thump" on them. Just thump.
Well, it is an important week in New Orleans. It's might be important. Who knows?
Jazz Fest.
We're going to be talking about it. It's rookie minicamp week. Lance, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight what rookie minicamp week actually is like and what we can expect to hear about over the next couple of days.
Well, I mean, from a player's perspective, it's obviously paramount, right? Like it's your first opportunity to to make a first impression. But it is your first opportunity as a pro, in essence. You get to be in the building. You get to get the lay of the land, your first official pro schedule. And it's a tiny taste of what training camp is going to be like. Now, obviously, it's not as long. There's no veterans around. It's not as grueling. There's no equipment being worn outside of the helmet. So there's no full contact periods. Now, I will preface that by saying in rookie minicamp, there's definitely going to be contact because there's a lot of guys that realize that this is their one and only opportunity to get noticed. And so from time to time, there are some collisions out there. There are going to be guys on the ground because they don't quite know how to be pros yet. But it is the most important thing is being able to, one, be on time everywhere that you go for these guys, and two, know what you're doing. Like everybody can play football, right? Or else you're not going to be signed, you're not going to be drafted, or you're not even going to be invited to as a tryout guy to a rookie minicamp. So everybody knows how to play football, but can you learn a system? Can you understand and can you learn and understand where you need to line up on the field, right? And then can you understand the adjustments that they're putting in for you when you have to make them? The National Football League offenses and defenses are more complex a lot of times than what these guys ran in their college careers. So, being able to adjust on the fly is something that's really, really important for these guys. And they're not going to install the entire playbooks for these guys. It's not going to be that mentally grueling for them, but it is going to be challenging, and it's going to be challenging on purpose because the coaches want to push them a little bit to see what they've got in them, see what they're made of, and see if they can handle just a small dose of what eventually is going to be a heavy load for them to carry once comes time for training camp. Now, obviously, they're only being rookies there. Again, they cannot install the entire playbook. So there's just going to be a portion of that playbook, but they've got to show that they can master that and understand that. And then once they start the practices, it's okay. it's all right for you to make a mistake. But what we don't want is repeat offenders, right? We don't want guys that are showing up and making the same mistake over and over again, because if you can't make those adjustments in that type of setting, in a rookie minicamp setting, then why would they believe that you can make those adjustments come Sundays in the regular season? So it's just to me, it's about opportunity, right? This is their major opportunity, because once OTAs and team minicamp rolls around, the opportunities for these young guys are going to be limited outside of a few of them, obviously. So it's their first impression, I think, is the phrase that I want to use for these guys. But it's a cool time, it's an awesome time, and it is like an amazing feeling for these guys, and an accomplishment to have made it to where they're going to be this weekend.
Yeah, I'm excited for this week, just because it's going to be these rookies together for the first time. I mean, Tyler Shough's already made a nice start. He's out there practicing with Bub Means and Jawan Johnson. I mean, that's what you want to see from the rookie quarterback, right? He's taking his first possible chance to get out there getting reps with the guys. And obviously it's not just him, but with him being the quarterback and the big pick, people are going to be monitoring every single thing that he does. So I guess it's nice that he's on the right start. But Ross, what do you think is the other big stuff that we can be on the lookout for this week?
Yeah, I think you're just looking to see who kind of stands out, if that makes sense. Like, who catches your eye throughout rookie minicamp. I think that there are those people who, like, I wasn't here in town covering the team at the time, but I remember hearing stories from people here when Alvin Kamara was on the field during rookie minicamp in 2017. And John, you were there for that, for rookie minis?
I believe so. Yeah, it was a while back. I don't know if I was at rookie minicamp, but I was at training camp for sure.
Big thing I always hear is, and I'm sure you saw it during training camp too, is just how differently he moved than everyone else. He just moved different than everybody else, right? Like the way that he got in and out of cuts, the fluidity in his movement, all those other things. And like, you can still see that. Like John and I were talking about that in training camp this past year, how much different Alvin Kamara moves than any other running back around him. And so that was something that stuck out in rookie minicamp that you also saw at his 7th year training camp. And so I think it's little things like that to where, John and I also were at training camp last year, and you could see the zip on Spencer Rattler's passes as compared to Kellen Mond. And it's like little things like that to where you start to just try to figure out those things that make a player stand out. Tyler Shough, one of the things I'm going to be really interested in seeing is, does he have the ball velocity, but can he also throttle down and go with touch? Can he also does he have a variance in his passes and all those other things like what we saw on tape? And so I think that it's just kind of trying to find those guys that stand out for some reason. Like Kelvin Banks, where do they have him working? You're not really going to fully see, but what kind of drills do they have him doing? What do they have him working on? And how does he look in movement, right? In the way that he's moving and stuff like that. The other thing that I love to watch too is when players are done with a rep, or they're done with something or whatever, they have that little bit of downtime as they're resetting for the next drill. Are they talking to the coach and getting feedback? Are they also working with other players off to the side? Things like that. Like, that's the other thing that I really enjoy watching. And so I think you're watching all of those things to just kind of see who stands out and why.
Yeah. Was it rookie minicamp whenever people were really excited about Rattler's arm?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. In training camp, he went viral for one of those throws he had to Tipton, I think it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was when everyone was excited about his arm and how he might compete to be a starter.
Then what happened?
All of those tweets with the random quotation marks.
Oh gosh, yeah. Scouts are impressed. Dude.
Scouts are impressed. It's like, why are you using that many quotation marks? What are you doing?
What are we doing?
Well, John, you've been to a few rookie mini camps yourself. Watching, I guess different than Lance participating. But what are you hoping to see?
Yeah, look, Ross and I are nerds, so I actually went back and looked at my last year's column on this, and it was over 1,000+ words on rookie minicamp. And we saw a day, maybe a couple hours. But the thing is, So like last year, there were 57 players in attendance. This is the first time you get to see a lot of these rookies, their rookie numbers. People care about their jersey numbers, although it's not solidified. Everybody's got to know that. We also see participation. So like last year, some of the players weren't present. Some of the players weren't participating. We found out about injuries from Dennis Allen back in the time there. That was a big deal. So that matters. Is anybody from this class hurt? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to already start off on the wrong foot. So that's a big one. We've talked about players, we on the past episode about the accrued seasons and all that. So I wrote down the list. Jordan Mims was there last year. Rajon Wright, Michael Jacobson, Anthony Orji, Fayon Hicks, Mark Evans. Those are some of the players who were able to participate in rookie minicamp, but they had been with the squad previously. We also get to talk to the coaches. That's where, like last year, I remember catching up with Darren Rizzi talking about the new kickoff rule, and Joe Woods talking about him, the new coaching staff. Like, we were really impressed with how authoritative Andrew Janako was and Clint Kubiak with the offense. It was nothing like we had seen, and no disrespect to Pete Carmichael or anything, but it was different, and that was exciting for us to see at rookie minicamp. It's like, okay, this could be a little bit different. So this is exciting. And so I feel like that's what you look for: participation, a lot of those elements that you will see in such a short time. And then in the locker room, you get to catch up with some of these players. Obviously, I think Tyler Shough is probably going to be the top one. You'll see where everybody's lined up. We saw Tally Fuanga at left tackle last year at rookie minicamp, and even though they downplayed everything, we kind of knew what was going to happen there. So it'll be interesting to see where Kelvin Banks goes day one, and then all that pomp and circumstance, dog and pony show. But there's a lot to look at for our first exposure to the team and seeing these rookies. And so it's fun. I mean, you get to see tryout players, but a lot of players are going to be there. Some, this is their only shot, and hopefully they continue after this. But, that's the reality, is the focus is on the rookies, the undrafted rookies, and then the tryout players.
You know what else happens this week, or starts to happen this week?
What?
Rookies start signing contracts because they're in the building. They're in the
Unless
same
you're a second
building
round
as the
pick.
team. Except for your second round pick, of course.
Yeah, that has always been fun.
Yeah, you'll wait on the second round pick. But I think typically this is when we start to see at least some of the contracts start to get signed and everything. And people start freaking out. Why haven't they signed contracts yet? And it's like, well, wait till they're like in the same vicinity, and then sometimes the ink hits the paper at that point.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say much more, but like Isaiah Foskey wasn't signed until what, July or August, like right before
same
training camp or something.
Yep.
Like, but they signed
Alante Taylor,
quicker.
same thing.
Yeah, but they signed Kool-Aid quicker this last year, so I don't know. Maybe there's progress there. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, maybe with the quarterbacks, is you might not be kind of like bartering over the guarantees as much for a quarterback. You might just kind of be like, all right, here you go, and then you get it. But I'm not sure. That'll be interesting to see.
It was at LSU. It wasn't a Saints thing, but I do remember having multiple pages of my notebook dedicated to the different offensive line alignments. Like, okay, well, this guy's here and this guy's here. Now this guy's here and this guy's here.
Yep.
So it's going to be fun to see what they have.
I brought out my often forgotten notebook from when John and I were covering last year.
There's all this sorts of stuff. If you can decipher that, good on you. But we paid attention. Oh, look, May 30th. Yeah, that was some.
Yeah, there you go.
That was a long time ago.
This one also still includes my list of things that Ross forgets going to games. I had a bad habit of forgetting stuff.
Great
so John
list.
and I would keep a list of all the things that I would keep. And not only was it a list, but it was a list with tally marks. Because I forgot
his
stuff
binoculars, forget his charger, forget this. He didn't forget himself.
Hey, it's rookie minicamp for everybody.
That's right. No. That list went well into week 18, my friend.
I had to look at the tape and get it cleaned up, and sometimes it just don't work.
Yeah, it starts at me.
Oh man. Well, it's rookie minicamp, but a lot of the secondary isn't going to be there this week. But we're going to tell you what that is going to look like come week 1. Well, we went through last week and predicted what the offensive line is going to look like come week 1. But now it's time to talk about the secondary. They made some big moves, some big players left. It's going to be some changes in the secondary this year, and we're going to figure out what that's going to look like. John, what is your prediction for the first 5?
Oh man. Well, look, I don't think it's a big mystery, right? Obviously you're gonna take Kool-Aid and Alante on the outside, and we would presumably put Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu in the back end. So now the question is, who's that extra guy? Who's that nickel corner? Who's the slot? Is Alante gonna play star role? Again, he's talked about, he said they plan on using him inside and outside. And so if I'm having to guess right now, if I'm having to put it, I'll put Isaac Yiadom there, right? I think Quincy Riley can ascend and get into that conversation, but I'm not going to just automatically insert a rookie. I honestly think Rico Payton deserves a shot too. Like, I know he was somebody that, it stood out in preseason. He made this roster after having a really hard first part of camp. Like Ross and I, and no disrespect to Rico, but Rico was struggling the first part of the training camp. Like, he was getting beat a lot. He was getting targeted a lot, but like something clicked in him, and he just went gangbusters like the back half of training camp. And so he earned a spot. And so I think that he's somebody, when you look at the track history, the corner spot and all this other stuff, that I think he's somebody that should be in that conversation. And of course, Ross and I love some Ugo Amadi. And so we can't forget about somebody like him. He's a good dude, solid dude. But he's somebody that could be in that equation too. He's a smaller guy, but in terms of a corner defensive back stature, but you wouldn't notice the way he plays. But so I say all that to say that I'm going to stick with Isaac Yiadom, probably moving towards the outside, probably move Alante inside to start week 1. It could look a lot different, but I'm not willing to put Quincy Riley, even as good as I think he can be, I'm not willing to put him there right now, week 1.
Yeah. Ross, what do you think about the corners?
I am. I'm totally okay putting him on the outside. I'm right there with John the whole way through. Tyrann and Reed being the safeties. I think I'm interested to see if Tyrann gets to play a little bit more away from the line of scrimmage last year or this year than he has been asked over the course of the past couple of years and everything. And then maybe Sankey gets involved whenever it comes to playing some of those closer to the line of scrimmage snaps, things like that. But just from like a base nickel situation, base nickel, but from a nickel situation, I've got Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Reed playing kind of these versatile safeties in the back. I've got Kool-Aid McKinstry starting on the outside, Alante Taylor. I could see Alante being outside in base and then moving inside in nickel, being that kind of thing. And then when Alante is in the slot at nickel, I am putting Quincy Riley as a starter over on the outside. I think he's very good. I think he's a good fit for what it is that Brandon Staley wants to do. I know I'm taking a risk by doing that. I completely understand, but I'm okay with being wrong about that. But I think that the thing with Quincy Riley for me is that he has experience playing in sort of this, man zone match, this type of like match coverage system, And so if there's anybody, like, in order for him to be able to start on the outside, he's going to have to prove that he knows that to Brandon Staley. And if he comes in knowing that, then that kind of checks the one and only box. He's already a physical guy, all those other things. So I'll go out on the limb and say that it's Quincy Riley starting on the outside week 1. In nickel, but I think it's Alante on the outside when it comes to those base sets and stuff like that.
I like how you called him Sankey. You already given him a nickname?
Is it? Oh, Sanker. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
My bad. That was my bad.
I mean,
it was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time before I did that because
I was like, man,
a bunch of times.
A favorite, and he's got a nickname for him. Everything. Call him Sankey.
That's the homie.
Sankey leg.
Oh, Sankey. That's the homie out here. I've already written that so many times that it had to redo it. And like, because there was wasn't it Bishop Sankey was a play? Was
Bishop
his
Sankey
name?
was a running back.
That's what always comes to mind. So I always have to like backspace and change it to an R. So it was only a matter of time before I said it out loud. Y'all should have been around the Lucas Kroll days when I kept calling him Nick Kroll, like from the league.
Yeah, I know. I remember it. I had to start Bishop Sankey 1 week in fantasy, so I lost.
You must have been down bad, buddy.
Oh man. Well, I think I'm pretty close by. I'm gonna go with Reed and Tyrann and back deep in the box, and then we're gonna go Kool-Aid and Alante on the outside, and I'm gonna go with our good friend Sankey starting at the nickel from week 1. I
Bump Sankey.
I like it.
Sankey. I think that he's gonna at worst be able to provide a lot of tackling And I think it's going to be a lot of rotation. You're going to see a lot of different people moving in and out, and I think that is what they've done a lot this offseason of getting. Now they have Alante, they have Sinker. Now you got me saying it.
Gotcha.
You got me saying it.
Got him.
Sinker. And I think they're going to be able to move a lot of people around, but I do think that we're going to see a lot of Sinker early on in the season.
He feels like he'd be a good fit for that star role, if I'm being honest, too. Just as like a physical hybrid safety corner type player.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see a lot of Alante on the outside. I think Alante is a perfect outside corner for this Brandon Staley defense. So I think that it's going to be. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and I think that that's where he's kind of. He has shown whenever he has shown the highest flashes, at least as a cornerback. In my opinion, I think it's come on the outside, the boundary. Lance, what do you think?
Well, I think I'm going to start with the slot since you wanted to put our boy Sankey in there. Look, the reason why a coach is going to play a slot receiver in a slot generally is not because he's going to get a lot of tackles. Like I'm putting a slot corner in there because that guy knows how to lock up slot receivers. Like that's the reason why I'm putting somebody in there. And couple that with how dynamic he could be as a rusher, what kind of ball skills he has in there, what kind of route recognition he has with patterns and things like that on the inside. I just have to disagree with you, Dylan. I think that Alante, to me, has been his best self when he plays on the inside. Like that.
Agreed.
I mean, the dude can get after the quarterback. The dude is physical. He understands route concepts and schemes from the inside. Like, I don't think he's a bad corner on the outside at all, but I think you take away a lot of his productivity by placing him on the outside when he is such a good player on the inside. Now, that obviously means we've got to have a corner that is just as good outside as he is, because you definitely can't have somebody out there with their knees chattering together on an island when you've got, your corner that's better than him on the inside and you're giving up bombs down the field each possession. Like, so you can't do that. I have a slash between Isaac Yiadom and Quincy Riley because I really don't know. Like, I don't know. I think clearly it's going to be one of those two, I believe, starting on the opposite side of Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I just don't know yet. I think Isaac is probably more ready now, right? He's like had some success in the NFL as a starter, right? So I think he has the leg up because he's a veteran who has played in this league. But I would not be surprised if at some point the starter opposite of Kool-Aid is Quincy Riley. Now the safeties to me are a little more interesting. I almost like I feel like a lot of times the nostalgia of Tyron being a great safety in the NFL makes me want to put him in that role and keep him in that role. But I almost feel like it could be a possibility here, right? I don't know, but he could be in more of the second stint Roman Harper, second stint Malcolm Jenkins class of, hey, we've got a package of plays for Tyron to be in the game. But if Tyron is healthy and feeling good, I agree. He's our starting safety, right? But if it's to the point where he's slowing down and can't quite do it the way that he once did, then it would make sense to have Jordan Howden out there with Justin Reed, right? And then we put Tyron in a dime package or whatever the package is, right? I mean, because I do believe that Justin Reed is a guy like Tyron that they can move around. They can play in the box. They can be more of your traditional strong safety that's kind of down there in the mix. But Tyron is way too productive to not play. So I'm not going to say like he's not going to play. He's going to be on the sideline and he's going to be a depth safety, and we put him in only if in the case of emergency. But I just don't know where they're at with him and where he's at physically. If he's healthy and balling, obviously he's starting. But if he's a guy that they're worried or concerned about playing, 70 or more snaps a game, then I could totally see them kind of pulling back a little bit and giving him a certain packages that he's in and helping our guys make plays in those in Brandon Staley's system. So I guess I'm the least committal of just about every position outside of Kool-Aid and Justin Reed. I mean, I think those two are locked.
Committed to. Yeah, you're pretty committed to Alante in the slot too, though.
For sure. Unless the other two on the outside are just not balling, and then we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up. I'm sorry, Russ. I'm just saying. I'm glad you brought up Jordan Howden too. But I mean, look, Ross and I learned Tyron didn't have a great year, right? Like there was some concerns really about that, and based on some of the feedback that. Hopefully he can turn things around because I think Tyron could still play, right? But I'm glad you brought up Jordan Howden because I know last year when we talked to him and talked to some of the coaches, they want to use him more in the box, so maybe he's more of a dime back. I don't know what the plan is. Justin Reed could potentially play there sometimes, like he's played in the slot in Kansas City. I'm not saying that's the best use of your resources necessarily, but I think there is some creativity. And then Dylan, I'm surprised you didn't mention Asante Samuel Jr. We're pounding the table for this guy.
I mean, I would like it, but I mean, he's not on the team.
You said week one. A lot can happen between now and week one. I'm just saying.
That is true. That is true.
Anyways, I'm just glad Lance brought up Jordan Howden because I think he's somebody, depending on the looks, depending on what happens, maybe they can unlock a little bit more with him too.
There was a lot of belief too that Jordan Howden didn't get to play his position over the course of the past couple of years as well, which there were people inside the building who saw him more as a post safety than as a guy that played down in the box. And so I wonder how much that kind of impacts things. Yep. And the way that I looked at the Tyrann Mathieu situation is like, look at his contract. He's got a base, but then he's got percentage. He's got incentives based on percentage of playing time and percentage of snaps taken in 2025. And so the thing I've always kind of wondered, that coupled with the addition of Justin Reed, coupled with, or I guess, grouped with the position of Justin Reed and then grouped with the draft selection of Sanker, Jonas Sanker, is that I wonder how much Tyrann's snap percentage has the potential to decrease as the season goes on. Not to the point to where he's not on the field. Like Lance said, you want him on the field. He's productive. But I do wonder if that incentive laden contract has to do with injury concern, right? He didn't miss any games last year, but he missed the back half of games. Like there were games that he wasn't able to finish. And then and then the other part is whether or not they are preparing for the potential to have to like downgrade his snaps and then bring somebody else up or something like that. And so like these things happen. Like I'm with you, Lance. I know that there's a nostalgia around the idea, but like from the business perspective of putting the best product on the field, you have to be ready to adjust no matter what that means.
Lance was invoking a lot of former Saints safeties. As long as he's not looking like Jarvis Bird, I think that things are going to be looking.
I was a little scared. I wasn't sure which safety you were going to talk about there.
I went with this safe.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean, he got production at Kirk Coleman when he was here. You know what I'm saying? Like
Kurt Coleman, I remember that.
But the second tenure for Roman and Malcolm, I think it went really well. So
if they get a second stint Malcolm Jenkins, it'll be better than last year's Tyrann. So I mean, I think you got to be happy with that.
Could be.
Yeah, I think that overall I'm in a good spot about this secondary. Even maybe last year when they had like the Paulson Adebo and Marshawn Lattimore's, I'm not going to say I'm feeling better than if they had like established stars, but I think that if you told me a year ago that they'd be without Marshawn and Adebo in a year, I think I'd be feeling a lot worse about the unit than I actually am.
Oh, sure.
Right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think
I'd agree with that. I think rebounded from those losses, or I don't want to say rebounded. I don't think that's the right thing. I think it was a level of preparation, first of all, like having Kool-Aid already, having Alontae Taylor already, and everything kind of gave them the opportunity to be able to like absorb those losses. I mean, to the point where they made the decision to take on the loss of Marshawn Lattimore. And then they use one of the selections that they get for a guy in the secondary that could potentially help them absorb losses elsewhere in the secondary. Plus they add Quincy Riley in day 4, round 4, my apologies. And so, yeah, I think that they're in a much better situation than I expected that they would be after having lost those 2 guys.
Well, but they also had to play without those guys for a lot of last season.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like you had 2 shutdown corners for the entire year and now both of those guys are gone. Like,
right.
Those, Marshawn obviously was in and out of the lineup, but missed plenty of time. And then Adebo's injury, so I think that as well helps to soften the blow of
sure.
losing 2 established starting corners.
They did the same. They had to do the same in 2023 too.
Yep.
And I'm just looking forward to the defensive coaching staff. Like it just so much of last year was so not on the same page, discombobulated and all that other stuff. Like it was just nobody was playing in sync. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate the most about Brandon Staley. He's like, I know it's cliche football talk. It takes all 11 guys, but he's like, we want to be attacking defense. We want to be somebody that all the people around, all hats around the ball, all 11 players, everybody's eating blocks, doing all this other stuff. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how this coaching staff is going to kind of be more harmonious because it just hasn't been. I was watching highlights of the 2019 Saints defense, and I just don't know what happened of how like they just had this gradual decline after 2020. It just things just got worse. You know what I'm saying? And I again, DA took on a head coaching job. Maybe that had something to do with it, not giving all the attention. But I think the defense is some spot where the Saints have got to get back to being their bread and butter. It's just because it's been not for the past several years, and they can't play in sync. It's just there's reasons why. If you look far enough, look beyond the results.
Yeah. Well, coming up next, we're gonna dip back into the mailbag and finally answer why didn't the Saints draft a wide receiver?
Because
it's mailbag time, everybody. We started off with a mailbag. We're going to close out with a couple of mailbags. And Nell Sutton asks, why didn't the Saints draft a wide receiver? And I'll start off because I think we kind of touched on it already a little bit earlier. Maybe it just didn't match up with their draft board, the value didn't match the need, in their opinion, at any of the point in the draft. And I do think, they talked about building from the inside out, and that's as far out as you get. So they wanted to focus on the less flashy picks. They already had picked up Brandon Cook. I think a lot of people forget that the Saints brought back Brandon Cooks this offseason. And so they had Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And I'm not saying that rounds them out at wide receiver, but they do have 3 starting wide receivers. They have, some other guys, and then they can get some, maybe bring in a vet. So I think it is still a need, but where the value was in the draft, maybe they just didn't feel like it was the biggest need. Lance, I know you were the big skill position guy in the draft. What do you think? Why didn't they draft a wide receiver?
Because undrafted wide receivers are the greatest. That's why.
What makes you say that?
Of course. Look, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, the value probably didn't add up to them when they were selecting with the guys that they had available to them. And I think there were more pressing needs for when they would have taken a receiver based on what we saw them do, right? Like it's one thing to go into the draft and say, well, the wide receiver, they need to have a wide receiver. But then when you see how they drafted their first couple selections, you're like, oh, okay, it kind of makes sense what they're doing and why they are not addressing the wide receiver position. A lot of times you can get wide receivers, specifically veteran wide receivers, later on after the draft, leading up to minicamp, even leading up to and into training camps. So there will be more receivers available. The thing that hurts, though, will be if one of these early receivers goes on and is a star when the Saints potentially had an opportunity to draft one of these guys, then you're like, oh man, we could have had that guy. It's the old Lamar Jackson thing. Like, oh my gosh, we could have had Lamar Jackson, but we took a player that shall remain nameless on this show. You know, it is disappointing for a fan base because the wide receivers are a more sexy pick than an offensive lineman and defensive lineman, a quarterback that maybe is not a fan favorite even. Like, so I get the frustration from a lot of people and why they don't understand why it happened. I guess I get it. But again, without us being in those meetings and really hearing the specifics of what they're looking to do, our guess is as good as anybody else's guess as to why they didn't draft one.
Yeah. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I was looking through it. So I know we always talk about big bodied receivers, right? And so I was just looking at it. Keenan Allen, 6'2", 211. Amari Cooper, 6'1", and a little bit less than that. And so the Saints actually have 2 6'2" receivers on their roster. They got Bub Means and Kevin Austin Jr. Now, I'm not saying they're big bodied guys. Kevin Austin Jr.'s got like 10 pounds less than what Keenan Allen is. But again, I think when you look at a veteran receiver, somebody who knows what they're doing, if you're turning to, we've said this on the show, if you're turning to Spencer Rattler, you're turning to Tyler Shough in this first year, you want veteran guys who know what they're doing. And so I feel good about what the nucleus they have with Cooks and Olave and Shaheed. It's just beyond that. What does that look like, right? Who's fourth, fifth? Because they have had injury problems and concerns. And so I think when you look at it, rookie receivers, there is a learning curve too. Like, everybody wants to get Justin Jefferson, right? You want to get Jamar Chase, but that doesn't always happen for you. And again, they had awesome talent to them, but the receivers, I mean, look at what happened in 2016 draft when Michael Thomas was taken. Look at all the receivers before him. They just didn't amount to anything. And so again, I think you can look at a veteran free agent receiver. May not be any of the names that we're talking about. It may not be any of the guys, but so it's just one of those, do they get somebody that can step up and be that guy? Maybe, because Ross, you and I know Bub Means had injury problems last year, right? And Kevin Austin Jr. came in late in training camp. And so I'm not saying that's the desired outcome. I'm just going down the path with everybody, right? And so again, but if I'm Tyler Shough, I'm Spencer Rattler, and I'm Kellen Moore, and I'm trying to take some pressure off of either quarterback, A, get the trenches right, B, get the run game going, and then C, get people who can do what they need to in the receiving department, move the sticks. That's why I like the concept of a Juwan Johnson or the receivers that they have, guys who know what they're doing. But if you're going to add to it at this point, get somebody who can do that and approve. Like they tried with that with Equinemius St. Brown last year. And I mean, he didn't even make the final roster, right? He was on the practice squad for stuff. And so even though he fits the prototype or fits the big bodied receiver, if you will, when they said it, you still got to go make the roster, still got to do all the things. And so I feel like I say all that to say that there are a lot of directions the Saints could go, but not drafting a receiver, I can see why not, because of how they view the current quarterback situation and all that other stuff.
I mean, you're talking about the 6'1", 6'2" guys, Equinemius St. Brown. Hey, Mickey, I'm a tall podcaster, so if you need a red zone threat, ignore the ad read from earlier and give me a call. Ross, I wanted to get you started off on our next question, our last question of the day, because Mark Woods and Logan Graffia both asked about Kendre Miller. I wanted to ask you, what is Kendre Miller's, maybe leash for the season? What are his goals? What does he need to do to stick on this roster?
Yeah. Can I say one thing about the wide receiver thing real quick?
Yeah.
No.
All right, cool. So when it comes to Kendre, there were 15 different wide receivers that were taken within 10 selections of the Saints' upcoming pick in this year's draft. And Mickey Loomis spoke after day 3, after the draft was over, and mentioned that there were like some wide receivers that were on their list and that were kind of in their crosshairs, but then they ended up not making it to them. One of the big ones was Isaac Tesla, the wide receiver out of Arkansas that went at pick 70 because of a trade up of all teams, the Detroit Lions trading up to take Isaac Tesla before at 71, the New Orleans Saints. Did I get something wrong there, Lance?
You did not.
Or
I
oh, God,
He's-
I understand.
He's just like,
The-
we could have had him.
Could
the,
have.
the Lions reached
Yeah.
jumping up to the third round to get a guy that, in my estimation, was a later round guy. But
Yeah.
hey, I don't get paid to draft players.
Sure. Yeah. And then another guy that went super, super tight to where the Saints were that they were also connected with before the draft was Savion Williams out of TCU. I think he went in the 80s, if I remember correctly. He was like 81 or something like that. And everything. So I think that there were players that were in their crosshairs. They just simply didn't fall to where the value any longer made sense, to Lance's earlier point about draft boards and things like that. So I just wanted to say that real quick. When it comes to Kendre Miller, I think the leash is short depending upon who's, how do I say this? I think he's got a couple of leashes. I think there's the injury leash and I think that there's the play leash. And I think that, like, if he makes it all the way through training camp healthy, the leash that's on him in terms of what he does to contribute is a lot longer than the injury leash if he ends up hurt again at some point during the offseason process. So I think it's two different things for him, two different criteria that he has to make. He's got to get through the offseason process healthy because if he doesn't, he's off the field and some other running back is on the field, which you don't want when you're trying to vie for a spot. You want to be on the field. So that's
First day of training camp. Camp.
Right. Yeah. We'll never forget that. Right. Yeah. And everything. And so I think that's number one. But if he gets through the offseason process healthy and can be on the field week one and can stay on the field, then I think that that's a situation where maybe the leash is a little bit longer because he's getting an opportunity to show himself in a system that better represents what it is that he does. During his entire career over at TCU, he was mostly an inside zone runner. The New Orleans Saints ran outside of the tackles over 70% of the time last year in Clint Kubiak's offense. That was not a Kendre Miller friendly game plan. Whereas in this year, where you're expecting things to be balanced, man zone or gap zone, inside, outside, just to boil it down to four easier categories. If it's balanced, then he's got a little bit more opportunity to actually show what it is that he can do. So I think he's got to answer the injury question first. And then after that, it'll become about he'll get an opportunity to show more what he can do in a game.
Yeah, I think that we are, it's just they need someone else to step up, whether that be Kendre Miller or Marcus Jones or Devin Neal. Devin Neal. It just needs to be somebody. And if Kendre can do that, hopefully it's Kendre.
Dude is talented. He's so talented.
Yeah.
He's got to stay available. Like, there are times last year, even when he was in the lineup, like missed assignments, missed, reads, all these different things too. So he's got to also make sure when he's available, he's studying, he's deep in that playbook too. I don't know if people catch that, but go back and watch some of the tape. You can see some of those things, but I think he's super talented. He still has a lot of good football, but man, this is a big pressure time for him because there are people behind him chomping at the bit to let him go. And again, I keep bringing it up every episode, but no Taysom Hill. Your run game suffers without a Taysom Hill. You need somebody else. That you can't get just 5 games out of Kendre Miller or 5 good games out of him. You need Alvin. You need him. You need another change of pace back. Like, you just need that for your run game to be what it needs to be.
Yeah. And to be fair, he can be as healthy as he wants during training camp and the offseason process. But if Devin Neal looks better, then Devin Neal looks better, right? Like, there's still the performance aspect of it. I do think that really the conversation of him making the roster is about him being healthy. The conversation about role is, still going to be up in the air, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's another thing with the Kendre Miller situation. It's not a matter of whether he can play or not. Like, I think he's played enough and made enough plays that you still have like a little crush on him. Like, when he's healthy, like, dude can play. And there would definitely be a fear now that if we were to move on from him, that he goes on and balls out somewhere else. And then you look like an idiot. But it happens. And I remember Sean Payton, like, time and time again talking about, man, we should have never let go of Rob Ninkovich. We should have never let go of Malcolm Jenkins when we did. Like all these players, it comes back to haunt you because you're losing that piece from your team. And obviously the jury is still out as to whether he can, get and stay healthy. But there are not questions about whether this guy can play or not, because I have seen enough from him with the ball in his hands in these games to be like, okay, well, yeah, this dude can clearly play in the NFL. It's just a matter of taking care of his body and being able to be what Mike Tomlin always says, availability is your best ability. And so if he's available, then I believe that, he's a guy that will not just be on the team, but will be a heavy contributor to what this team does offensively.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you've seen enough from us to keep us in your podcast rotation, because we'll be right back here on Thursday, ready to talk more about the Saints offseason moves and what to look forward to. Thank you for listening to the Saints Squad. Check out me, Ross, John, and Lance on our socials for the latest. And be sure to make a Locked On NFL your second listen.